We start this week with Julie Beal, who's been looking into this digital ID. Hi, Julie. Welcome to Dialect.
Thank you, Tony.
First of all, what is the basics of this? What online activity is this new government digital ID supposed to help with?
It's meant to help with all aspects of our lives, to be honest. It depends which things we focus on. If we talk about the government aspect, it will be all public services will be digital. All health services, they all need you to prove who you are with this online identity, which I've nicknamed Global Smart ID.
Is there an official term for it that the government are using?
They're calling it identity assurance, but it's called different things around the world. In Iran, for instance, it's called Smart ID. I mean, this thing is really literally, it's global.
I thought this was just something for Britain, but it's not. It's for right around the world. That's an incredibly ambitious project. How far along down the line is it?
It's very nearly up and running. It's already been trialled. Apparently, the UK is, because our form is slightly different, we're kind of leading the world. Other countries have just got an EID. That's a European electronic identity, which has a smart chip in the card. But in the UK and America, they know that we don't want identity cards, so they're trying to make it all purely digital. But there's no getting away from the fact that it does require having some kind of smart technology, otherwise you won't be able to do it.
So is the idea in other parts of the world then that you've got a card, you carry in your wallet or something, and then when you're next to the computer, you sort of plug that into the computer to prove that's who you are?
Yeah, they store biometrics on the chip, and then they have various other ways of proving who you are, because it's all remote. It's how to prove yourself online without any person being involved. It's all done with technology. So in the countries that have got an electronic ID, they can access government services online. So all governments are becoming e-gov, electronic government. So there's a huge wall going up between citizens and the government.
Now, it means also, of course, that if you're not on the internet, you won't be able to get any of these things, or at least it will be much more difficult for you. When you say without anybody involved, that means just the person who's at the end of the terminal who's trying to access the services, and the rest of it will be automatic.
Yeah, all of it's done through identity providers and attribute providers.
OK, now, what about biometrics? You mentioned that there. This is a new term, isn't it? Really come in the last, 10 years or maybe 20 years or so. These biometrics, what are they?
They are a way of sampling the human body for its unique characteristics, like fingerprints, the pattern of your iris, even the veins in the palm of your hand can be used as biometrics. And a copy can be taken and stored on a chip. That's what's already happened with our passports, isn't it? We've got biometric passports. So a copy is stored inside there and can be compared to a database to check and see if that really is you, because it's unique. Very invasive, I feel.
Well, it is. I mean, it's the sort of stuff from science fiction films, and obviously the possibility for this is that it may be abused. But going back to the what online activities you use to do this, I mean, the most important online activity is obviously to do with keeping you alive, keeping you with food, giving you access possibly to your bank account, this kind of thing, and benefits. So are you saying that these EIDs or digital smart IDs are going to be mandatory for everybody that wants to claim a benefit, and without it you will literally starve?
Well, that's what I'd like to know. I think we need some answers from the government. I can tell you what David Rennie said.
Who's David Rennie?
He was from the Cabinet Office, and he's leading this agenda for making the UK digital by default. He says that it all comes from a report by Martha Lane Fox. David Rennie phoned up the IDESG group in America and updated them on how the UK is doing. And we're going to actually quote what he said. He said, GDS, that's Government Digital Services, I think, was created to pursue this agenda. All government services have to be built from the ground up to be digital first. Then we've got to think about the people who are unable to use digital channels. We think of them as a secondary consideration. So we get it right 80% of the time in the first instance. So in other words, what he's saying is that they are expecting 80% of the UK to be able, he's not talking about willing, he's talking about that he thinks that 80% of the UK population will be able to use this service. There isn't a choice being given. They're framing it as a choice in the sense of you get to choose from 5 identity providers. In other words, you have to hand over control of your identity to people like Google and Microsoft and Facebook.
Hang on a minute, because that's privatising it before it's even started. I would have thought the very minimum, and any kind of digital ID, personal ID system would have to be run by the government, not by some private business. How on earth has that happened?
Well, that's what they're making a big song and dance about. They're saying, isn't it wonderful? It's not a government thing. That's what I mean about that they're saying. I mean, even David Rennie said in that presentation that I've just quoted from that it's hard for it to be accepted in the UK and the US. So they say that it being private is a good thing because the government aren't involved, but the government are involved hugely because they are identity providers themselves. They issue the passports and driving licenses and things, and those are classed as credentials or attributes.
The question I want to put to you, Julie, is has the public been asked about this? Has it been debated in Parliament? And has it been debated in the national press? Because it's obviously a massive change for people to be handing their own personal identities over to private companies and not being able to, for example, get benefits, get access to bank accounts, get access to all the things that they're used to and need to live through the online services, various online services, everything you can think of, basically, through a private business.
Think of, yeah.
So has there been any debate about it? I mean, we live in a democracy, surely. A debate is absolutely necessary and a discussion before a decision can be reached about something as important as this.
I thought that's what democracy meant, but I've never seen much sign of democracy. All we get to do is vote. So, no, I don't understand why journalists aren't covering this because there's a huge amount of information. I'm just absolutely drowning in it. And the idea of queuing up in the post office to have my biometrics checked, they're the ones that are going to be dealing with if your identity is revoked as well.
Hang on. Your identity is revoked?
Yeah,
what does that mean?
Once upon a time, my bank account, I went to put my card in, and it swallowed my card, and in the end I couldn't get any money, and I did telephone banking and was told, every time I told them my date of birth, I was told that was wrong, and I couldn't get access to my account, and I had to go in and take in my passport and stuff to my local branch, and they'd made an error and given out money from my account. Now that was just one card. If your identity gets revoked, so if one thing goes wrong, that could be enough for the identity provider to say, sorry, it's rejected basically, and that means that you lose access to everything. So better get down to the post office and beg, and I don't know how you can discuss things like that at the counter with somebody.
Now, this is incredible. So you're saying that the database that is used by your people who are providing you with banking services, which has got your date of birth, the various details about you, and they actually came back and said to you, I'm sorry, you've got the wrong date of birth because someone had altered it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was somebody in the bank. Like someone had come in, they'd lost their card and reported it, and then said that they still wanted to get money out, and they took it from my account and then stopped my card. And when I asked about it, she said that there was just one number wrong. And I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, well, one number wrong. If I do telephone banking, I have to go through a whole series of questions. So anyway, it just makes you think, doesn't it, about how easy it is for things to go wrong. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who've had similar problems.
You know what, Julie, it makes me think of all those memory sticks and CDs that have been left on trains by these government officials and private people, and just quite how secure our data is. I don't think it's very secure at all. Anyway, what's the latest on the Smart ID, and how far has it got so far?
It's going very slowly, to be honest. I mean, in terms of, it was meant to be rolled out with universal credit in the autumn last year, and it's still not not up and running for that. They're going to be introducing, so you can have access to your driving license, and basically so you can check your tax status online as well. The PAYE, the tax code, look at your record.
Now, I'm afraid HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, who do all this tax work, have got a pretty appalling record. They keep getting people, basically trying to take people to court for tax that they don't owe. It doesn't sound to me as if they can really be trusted with this. Have you thought very much about other potentials for abuse? Because we've talked about that quite a lot here, but it seems there's enormous potential for abuse, particularly when this is being handled by private businesses who could be quite easily bribed by somebody to mess with someone's life.
Absolutely, but it's not just. There's another, like they've got various. Basically, it's a militarization of the internet, because all of these standards are satisfactory to the military. They have helped to implement the encryption that's going to be used, and it's them and the top corporations that have got a vested interest in controlling exactly who has access. It's basically about accessing the internet. They call it a circle of trust. What they're saying is that they don't trust you. You have to prove yourself continually before you're allowed privileges, access to buildings even, or benefits.
Yeah, it certainly does sound like all of the people that thought that they'd won out with stopping the national identity card, which of course was largely because people felt that it was too fascist. The idea that, the Nazis would always ask people everywhere they went, where do you have your papers? Let's see your papers. And they decided in Britain that we didn't want to go down that Nazi route. There's a sort of whiff of fascism about this as well. For many people, the idea that the government and private companies can control everything you do through this private ID system. And anyway, which private companies are going to be rolling out this smart ID, Julie?
Google. There's quite a lot of identity providers. So, there are certain websites that you can go to now where it says sign in with Facebook, sign in with Google, Twitter, LinkedIn. They're all using what's called OpenID. And if you do that, then the website owner gets access to your personal information. They say that it's user controlled, but I would much rather have, if I had to have a digital copy of my own birth certificate, passport, etc., I'd rather carry that myself than have an identity provider do it for me.
That's amazing. I mean, it's privatisation of our very most basic personal information. Anyway, finally, Julie, where can people go online to find out more about this, or else even out in the real world maybe?
Well, I've had all my information from webinars and things like biometric updates, and it's all very much in the industry, the security industry. But I just want to make people realise that all this stuff about the NSA.
You mean Edward Snowden revelations?
Yeah, and about the NSA and GCHQ having access to our information. This is already happening. I'd suggest people check out Experian, which is an identity provider, and they have a data set called Mosaic, which gives fine-grained detail on individual households. Not postcodes, but individual, every household within the UK. It's called Mosaic. And they give psychographic, behavioural, transactional and demographic data.
Scary stuff. It's the sort of stuff that if Hitler had this back in the 1930s, he would have been salivating, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, Julie, just I did say finally, but finally again, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in the whole Smart ID agenda.
Basically, I came across the NSTIC document, which is really where this has come from, the National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace, which is in America, and I felt a responsibility to tell others, especially when I kept trying to find information that was reported by journalists and couldn't understand why such a huge topic hadn't been reported on. And basically, I've wanted to know what my world is going to be like in the future. I don't want to have this and everything, putting all eggs in one basket, in other words, on that little microchip, means that if you lose your phone, because it will be a phone if it's for all payments, then the way I see it, we are very, very close to being implanted with that chip. You'd still have the phone, but the chip would then, would be like NFC, kind of linking with your phone. But then you wouldn't lose it, would you? All that information.
So did you have any kind of, did you work in the electronics industry or in banking or something before you started looking into this?
No, it's a huge struggle, and I think people should be helping. I think people in the security industry who've been working on this technology, when they realise it's part of a huge picture, as I said, it's a militarization of the internet. They're creating, the identity providers are going to be like gatekeepers, and they're eating our data, eating it. The World Economic Forum says data is the new asset class, and they are selling this information about us, and they will continue to do so. This is a scheme. Instead of us carrying our information and them not making money out of it, they're going to be doing it like this. And in the future, I'm going to be writing about the trusted platform module, because trusted computing, the standards have been agreed. They've been heavily influenced and worked on throughout the years by the National Security Agency, and they've put out a white paper saying that the opt-in should no longer be optional. It's a hardware security, and it will lead to, I think, from what I can tell, data rights management, copyright control, basically, and could even end open source software. So I think people really need to be aware that the keys are being injected by the manufacturers. They keep a copy of, I think it's the private key. It satisfies the NSA. They're happy. Internet lockdown.
And whereabouts can people go to read some of your articles online?
Okay, getmindsmart.com. It's a rubbish website, but all of them have been published at activistpost.com. So I always say big up to them. Thank you very much, Activist Post.
And thank you very much, Julie Beal.
And to you, Tony, for having me on.
Okay.
Thank you.
All the best, love.
Thank you.
Cheerio.
Bye.
You're listening to dialectradio.co.uk.